Hey, welcome to the Gentle Rebel podcast. Andy Morse here, and this is where we explore the intersection of sensitivity, creativity, and the impact of the world around us on who and how we are. I am really happy to bring you a conversation in this week's episode. It's with author and psychiatrist Judith Orloff, who has written a number of books about high sensitivity and empathy over the years. I had an email from her earlier in the summer telling me about a slightly different book that she had written. And when I heard about it, I was like, oh, this sounds interesting. It's called The Highly Sensitive Rabbit. Steady on. It's a children's book. And it reflects Judith's desire to inform, equip, and support sensitive children, parents, and educators in a fun and playful way. So it was great to chat with Judith about the ideas in the book and also to speak to her about the challenge of writing in this format, communicating ideas that can get complex, but to do so in a simple and succinct way that anybody can grasp. I can imagine using this as a prompt or a set of prompts for conversations around people's experiences, challenges, preferences, needs related to their highly sensitive temperament or the sensory processing sensitivity in those that they know. We might even read it in the Haven Book Club at some point. So yeah, join us there if you fancy that. Speaking of brevity, I'm going to shut up now and I'm going to hand over to a previous iteration of me back on an early September evening when I was chatting with Judith. All right, enjoy. See you soon.
We're about to witness the greatest miracle of the machine age.
The Gentle Rebel podcast.
I'm so glad you could come. This is going to be such an exciting day. I hope you enjoy it. I think you will.
Well, I am really delighted to be joined by Judith Orloff, the author of The Highly Sensitive Rabbit, which I'm really excited to talk about. It's the first time I think I've talked about a children's book on the podcast. So yeah, really thrilled. How are you doing, Judith?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. Yes. Yeah, maybe should we just start with a little bit about the book? What inspired you to write this? Because it seems like a fairly new endeavor for you as well, I think.
Yes, I've never written a children's book before. I've written the Empath Survival Guide, The Genius of Empathy, a guide to intuitive healing. So I've really devoted my career as a psychiatrist and empath to intuition and empathy and healing and awakening those parts of ourselves. And I wanted to go on to a children's book because sensitive children, I believe, are going to save the world. But they need to be in good shape to do it, because they're going to inherit the earth. Like when I'm gone, it's the children now that we must get in good shape. So I wrote this book called The Highly Sensitive Rabbit, and that's the cover, and that's Aurora, the heroine. It's about, I won't give it all away, but it's not just for children, it's for everyone with a sensitive child within who's been shamed or bullied or put down or told that they're overly sensitive, where you're not, or made you feel like you don't belong in this world. It's pretty much how I felt as a little girl, because I didn't have anyone to relate to. I didn't have any other empaths. I didn't have any other dreamers, or having dreams that came true, or anyone who could feel energy, in nature. I didn't have any of that. Nobody had the vocabulary when I was growing up to support me. So I wanted to give children a book that could support them and their parents and the educators and their friends and everyone who loves the child and wants to communicate with the child. That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's something really important about that, kind of seeing your experiences reflected back and encapsulated in that on the pages of a book. That, yeah, I think I would have appreciated that, I think, as a child. Oh, well, that doesn't make me weird. Yeah.
And it also to awaken the sensitive inner child within, in case you find you maybe have become a little overly serious about life, or things are just too mundane, or you've lost the connection to magic. It also will give you that back again, which is a big gift. To find the magic in yourself and to honor that inner child that is sensitive and loving and insightful and deep and fun and creative and loves nature and loves to connect with animals and good people. So that's the part that it's intended to awaken or reclaim or go deeper with wherever you're at.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, and just sort of kind of normalize that stuff as well for people, that actually this is a natural part of you and can be a natural part of you. And I think I really love sort of exploring. You just mentioned creativity. One of the things that I'm really passionate about is that link between sensitivity and creativity. And so it might be nice to hear a bit about the creative process for you that went into the book itself, and then maybe we'll kind of get into that link between sensitivity and creativity as you see it, but we'll also go through some of the book and see how that reflects different aspects of high sensitivity and the experiences that people might have had, and all of that kind of stuff. So how does that sound?
That's great. It takes a lot of creativity to envision a children's book because you have to think really short and really small. This is a long book. Like my other books are 250 pages long. Now, this book, The Highly Sensitive Rabbit, is very dependent on illustrations and fewer words. So when you open the book, you're actually transported to a place where you can access the energy of that place and your spot in it, to find you as the highly sensitive bunny, which everybody has one inside, everybody, even if they're not in touch with it. And the creativity of a children's book is the illustrations. Katie Tanis is the illustrator of this book, and she loves animals and she wants to get them accurately. She doesn't want to make cartoons out of animals. So I don't like the cartoon children's books. They kind of freak me out. And I like the innocence that she's captured in Aurora the bunny, and the creativity of working with an illustrator, and getting it right. Because I had a vision of the face of Aurora the bunny, and it was actually based on, I have stuffed animals at home because I love them, and it was based on the face of the seal I have named Grace, and she has the perfect look for Aurora. So I showed Katie my Grace, and she got the expression perfectly, which was creative for me. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, how do you even know what you want to, recreate in a children's book? But I knew I loved Grace's being and face, and so she was able to make it into the rabbit, the bunny. So it's as you create anything, you have to be in touch with your creative impulses along the way and not have any real strong idea about how things should go. It comes as you do the book. And you must give credence to any kind of flashes that come through to you. Even they might work out, they might not work out. But for me, part of the creativity was reading the book to people. Like before it became into the form it is now, I would read it to people who are sick. Just to sit by the bedside. And before, it was just paper. It wasn't even bound yet, but I would read it to see their response. I read it to my partner's grandson, who's on the autistic spectrum, and I showed him the cover and I said, what do you think of this? And he goes, let's read it. which is just the response I wanted.
No, perfect. Yeah.
That's really it. So that's the impulse. So that's part of my creativity, is going moment by moment with where it needs to go. And the reading of it to people in various situations was an important part of the development for me.
So that sort of interaction between you reading it and them listening to it, and was that in a part of the formation of the book itself, or was it already complete at that point when you were reading it?
It was a version of the story was already made, and I wanted to read it to select people who were in a variety of situations to see how, if it helped them, to see what reaction they had to it. Because it's simple, the words are simple. You don't have to stretch your mind to read this book. It's like a very simple, right to the heart book. And to get any feedback, if it was too long, if it was too wordy, or they didn't get this or that, or what they did like. I like getting that feedback, as it was not planned. It was always a spontaneous reading. I would just ask someone if they would like me to read this to them in this situation. Yeah. So I got a good sense of what people were responding to. And that was part of my creative process with it. And this book is about my childhood. I'm Aurora, the highly sensitive rabbit. And my nickname actually is Aurora in my adult life.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm,
so it's a kind of biographical, autobiographical thing. Yeah.
It is. And how alone she felt, although she had brothers and sisters and a mother who cared for her. As I didn't have brothers and sisters, I was an only child. But I had a mother and father who were both physicians. They both loved me, but they would tell me, Judith, you're overly sensitive. How are you ever going to survive in the world? You need to get a thicker skin. People are going to think you're weird. So that's what I heard in my childhood, and being alone, an only child, and hearing those messages, it's very confusing, and it made me feel very lonely and like there was something wrong with me that I had to fix. But no one would say how to fix it. I mean, you can't just go from sensitive to not sensitive. The older you get, the more it's growing. And so I took refuge in nature and the moon. I would look up at the moon every night. That's why, I don't know if you can see the little moon on this. Yeah, she's looking up at the moon, and that's what I still do and used to do. I've done it all my life. And it's, I don't know, it's part of my sensitive child, but this book is asking you to look at your sensitive child or your child's sensitivity. What does your child gravitate to? What do they like to do? Because often children who are sensitive might not like to do the same things as other kids because it's too high stimulation. And like, for instance, I don't like being in a place with lots of noise. It's just too much for me. But people who are not, empaths or sensitive people, they could go to, big concerts, Rolling Stone concerts in a big stadium, and everyone's cheering, and who knows what else they're doing in the audience, all that energy going around. They love it. And for me, it's just, get me out of here. It's too much. So, but one is not better than the other, but it's just important, if you have a sensitive child and you're reading this book to the child, to really encourage them to be who they are and what they like. And let's say they like going for a walk by the woods, in the woods. Let's say they like looking at all the little animals. Let's say that's what they like, instead of doing video games or going to, sports events. Maybe they like that. So don't force them to go to sports events. That's just makes everything worse, because it's too high stimulation for them. And so you have to listen and communicate. And this book, I hope, will help parents and educators and friends of the little ones communicate better and find out, what do you like? What do you need? And it's okay to take alone time. It's okay to set a boundary, with somebody if they're doing something you're not comfortable with. And Aurora learns these simple tools of what to do, as a little bunny who has these sensitivities. And one thing she was able to learn was that she she made these friends in the desert after she lost her house. One of the friends was a javelina, and you probably don't know what a javelina is. Do you?
No,
No.
I haven't got a clue. No.
Javelina is a desert creature in the Sonoran Desert, which is near Arizona, where the book takes place, because it's an environment that children's books are rarely placed in that environment. They're usually in forests with magical things. But this book is in the Sonoran Desert with desert creatures. And so at the end of the book, there's a list of all the desert creatures, who they are, and what their habitat is, to teach the kids about the desert creatures. But the javelina is like a wild boar, and they're wild and they're different, and they might not always fit in, but they're wise. And so one of the animals that helped her, Aurora, was the javelina, who said, it's okay to express yourself. It's okay to look up at the moon, and I'll be with you if you want. And it's okay to say no to me if you don't want me to be there sometimes. So they learn skills like that adults need. I mean, many adults can't do that. They're afraid to say, no, I'd rather be alone tonight.
Yeah.
So it's a mixture for everyone, even though it's under a children's book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that struck me reading it was how it can be, it's almost, each page is like a doorway prompt to thinking, as you say, about what is it that you like to do. And, there's the line about sort of staring up at the peaceful glow of the rising moon. And I made a note of that because it's like, that's really evocative and beautiful. And yeah, kind of inviting the child or the reader to just take a moment to pause and consider, no, what is it that I like to do? What is it that puts me at peace? And as you were saying, it's almost like with a child, there's an unthinking draw to certain things. So it's not necessarily that I want to go and do this. It's just the natural gravitational pull towards, whether it's a natural to nature or to, you just find yourself looking at the moon and daydreaming or night dreaming or whatever. Just, sort of stimulates the imagination or just puts you in a sort of grounding mood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The gravitational pull of your intuition. And when you teach children to honor that they're moved to go outside and look at the moon, or they're moved to go play with the little frog, or they want to write poetry or sit next to their tree who's their friend. All of this is real, and you don't want to ever take that away, saying, oh no, trees can't talk to you, honey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And there's that sort of moment where Aurora's mother say, like, she's worried about Aurora, and I think that's a really interesting phrase. I'm worried about you because you spend so much time alone. Go and play with your brothers and sisters. And there's no conversation between them that goes on to be like, to check in with, are you okay? Like, what is that being alone about? Is it actually, because then later there's a sense of judgment from her brothers and sisters that, do we have to play with her? She cries all the time. So is that spending time alone a result of, feeling judged and feeling left out of that? Or is it that just natural gravitational pull to be alone, and to be okay in that? And I think that in itself is a really, important distinction and something to not grapple with necessarily, but just to gently invite that awareness, from Aurora's mother's perspective, to, okay, what is that? Is that something I can help with, or is that something I just need to allow to be and to flourish in its own way, even if that makes me worried and my worry is actually unfounded? Yeah.
Right. Or exactly, but it opens up the conversation between the mother and the child.
Exactly.
So it's a conversation instead of a judgment. The child. And for mothers who read this, or fathers, or relatives or friends, whoever's reading this, to begin to trust the experience of the child and not try and make them into the mold of what they feel is a normal child.
Yeah.
Not necessary. They're fine as they are. They just have to learn certain techniques so they don't get hyperstimulated, and that causes tantrums, or they don't, rip up something in the house because they're so frustrated. You want to ask them what they need, and you want to help them discover what they need and have it be all right with you. I mean, unless it's destructive, but I'm talking about if a child wants to go and be alone to be with their imaginary friend. No, don't get alarmed about imaginary friend. Many children have imaginary friends. So you can, just say, okay, all right, I'll catch up with you. We'll meet again in a half hour or something, or an hour, and we'll go for a walk. But to begin to ask the child what's important to them. And so, the brothers were just making fun of Aurora and shaming her. And that's what happens in schools with highly sensitive kids, is that they get shamed by bullies. They get shamed, they get laughed at, they get mocked. So it's a really terrible, humiliating situation. And so the parents really need to intervene with that in terms of, having zero tolerance for bullying, and enlist the school's help with it, because it needs to have a big force coming at it so it doesn't continue. Because it's not just sensitive kids, it's all kinds of kids who are different or can't stick up for themselves, or just are targets. And so part of the highly sensitive rabbit is teaching the child that he or she is okay. It's all okay. And it's okay to get the help of the school and the children with the bullying, because that's the only thing that has been proven that works. It can't just go on and on. That's very, needless to say, unhealthy for the child. But sensitive children are often targets because they don't know how to deal with their sensitivity, and they go to the corner of the yard, or they go somewhere off on their own. And the other kids are playing. And so it creates an uneven dynamic. And so the parents can really help then, talking of what's happening at school, tell me, and let's try and work it out and figure it out, just what's going on with the child, and giving them tools. They might say, these kids are screaming all the time, and everything's moving so fast, I can't stand it. So, okay, this is what you do. Instead of making them wrong, you say, okay, this is something you can try, and let's talk about it if it works. And so you are the ally of your child. And perhaps you were a highly sensitive kid. The parents were often, if they're highly sensitive parents, they were highly sensitive kids, and maybe this is painful for them to deal with because they were bullied when they were children. So it's a chance for the parents to heal, these things they experienced as well when they were younger. So it's all a big healing festival.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can have its own baggage, I suppose, as well, can't it? If you're seeing, if that brings up the pain that you might have experienced as a child, and you're sort of desperate, or you see yourself reflected in the child, and you're like, oh no, don't be like that. Like, and you actually then perpetuate potentially the same thing, unless you, kind of do engage with it at that level of, okay, actually, let's make this work for you. Let's put an end to that cycle, and bring you out as you are. Because as you said at the beginning, like, I very much vehemently believe that we need highly sensitive people to really flourish and to thrive in society at the moment. And like, more than ever, like, there's a reason why, sensory processing sensitivity, these traits have evolved with us as a species, and they're in so many different animals, because it's a part of that collective survival strategy as well as individual survival strategies. And it just feels like, the more we push it to the sidelines or try and get rid of sensitivity, the worse things get. And I think we're seeing the outpouring of that in many ways around the world right now. So yeah, and I think you address that really well in the book as well, like just gently looking at the feelings. So when is it with the flood? So when Aurora and siblings were looking for grasses to eat, and the sky darkens, and there's the flash flood, and the other two run for cover, and Aurora's sat frozen, thinking about all the other animals in the desert, and worrying, what if they can't make it to safety, and kind of very empathetic, which is also about the coyote as well. They're all scared of the sound of the coyote when they're sleeping at night, and she's just wondering, oh, I wonder how it's feeling, and all of that kind of thing. And yeah, that's very resonant for me. It's the sort of thing I think,
where you care so much about other people, that you're always thinking about other people and their well-being. Now, that's a trait of a highly sensitive child and an adult. But Aurora ends up in the rain in this big storm by herself. And because she's all thinking about all these other people, so it brings up the idea of, when do you set boundaries? When are you having codependent giving thoughts, where you're more concerned with others and you're not taking care of yourself when you need it? So one of the messages of the book is that self-care is very important, for sensitive rabbits, sensitive people, and all of us, that we have to practice self-care and not always be concerned with other people, because then that could drain you in a big way if you're not also taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. And it's something that we can lose ourselves to the care of others as well, lose from the beginning, like the things that you care about, the things that anchor you, that bring you to life, that spark creative energy in you. If you don't have that, I think it's sort of creative practices and things like that are really important with this, in bringing you back to who you are at the heart of that, and ways to process. Because I think of creativity as giving us a way to process things that are going on, to notice, what is it that is impacting me? What am I feeling? That's why I kind of like having a journal practice as a starting point.
Right.
And then to be able to express and sort of turn feelings outward, turn them back towards the world, and express, that post-processing creative practice, work, whatever it is, so that then you bring that sensitivity in a tangible way back into the world itself, so that you're not just hiding or not just sort of sitting and thinking, I can't cope with this.
But that brings up a really interesting point, because as a psychiatrist, I work with a lot of empaths. I have a private practice, and I see people on Zoom from all over the world. And a percentage of those people who are empaths, do hide from the world. They get to a point where the world is too much. It's just too much for them to process. And so they go in their homes and become homebound, with their animals, because the animals are the unconditionally loving beings, unlike humans who aren't always that way. And so it's just safer for them to stay alone, but yet they get lonely and they want a connection. But how could they connect with this horrible world out there? And so that's the skill set that adults and children have to learn. There's a reality. There's, we're having very tough times out there for empaths and all sensitive people. It's very hard to take what's going on in this world with all the wars and the violence and everything that goes straight to an empath's heart, and like the dagger in the heart. And so part of this book and part of my work in the Empath Survival Guide is, how do you deal with the world as it is and not take it on? have a big heart, but also have time where you're not focusing on all those people who are suffering, where you're focusing on yourself, where you're living your own life, where you're developing your own power, and doing something to add to the world. Because empaths get absolutely sucked into suffering. And it's not a good idea. If I did that, I probably couldn't even be here talking to you because I wouldn't have any energy. So I'd be so exhausted from being so involved with everyone's suffering. So as a psychiatrist, I've learned to set mostly healthy boundaries because it protects me. And children need to learn how to set healthy boundaries with bullies and other people. So it's the same thing. And when the great thing is when they learn to do it as children, they know how to do it as adults. So it's not a learning curve where you start when you're older. It's the best thing in the world to start sensitive children with these simple techniques, such as take a breath, just stop, breathe. Instead of saying anything, instead of crying, just take a breath and come back to yourself. I mean, that's so magical if they're able to get in the habit of doing that. So parents can teach very simple tools to young children and older children. So it's you have so much, so many ways to help a highly sensitive child and to help yourself if you're a highly sensitive parent. It takes a lot of energy and centeredness to be a mother or a father. And to have children. Now, that's a lot of energy for a lot of years. And so you parents also, it's important to learn how to quiet down and practice self-care a little bit even, so that you can, be the example, because the little ones follow your example like baby chicks. They follow their mother and do exactly what the mother does. So you want to be a good example of how you handle stress, how you handle your sensitivities. If you say to them, I need to go be alone right now because I need to calm down, and I'll be with you. You just sit out here for 10 minutes and I'll be back. And, at first they'll be crying and don't go, all of that. There might be some resistance, but soon they get in the habit of saying, well, mommy's taking care of herself, and I'm waiting. And so that's great. It's great to instill that so early.
And do you have any practical tips? I mean, obviously just in a quick manner here and general, but for sort of getting into that, if that's something that you haven't done or you're struggling with, maybe someone listening.
Yes, but you have to get used to thinking about yourself as being worthy of self-care and to not making up all kinds of reasons why you can't do it. Because I know that everybody's overloaded. Everybody has so many things to do. I mean, there's a reality element to that in life. However, if you want to lead a really beautiful life and feel well and to have an open heart and to have children who are happy and learn how to really take care of themselves, then you have to learn these skills. The simple skills, number one, of taking a breath when you're stressed out. Number two, not speaking or blurting out anything when you're agitated, because you can't take things back. You can just say, I need to back off for a while, or I need to go to the bathroom. You can always say that. If you think you're just about to say something that you'll regret, because if you're on sensory overload, that's often what happens, where things just come out of your mouth and then you regret it. So to be able to catch yourself in those moments, and also to practice simple meditation, to be able to close your eyes, put your hands together, take a breath, focus on something beautiful. It could be a flower or a night sky, whatever you love, and to just learn to center yourself. And you could do this for 3 minutes to start with, not longer. There's a lot of the mothers that I treat, 3 minutes, that's all. Don't do it any longer. Even though you might want to, because whenever you limit somebody, a lot of times they want to do more, but don't. And just start with 3 and begin to learn to have control of yourself and who you are in the world. to be able to make choices about being the best person you could possibly be, and having that pause button. You know, when you're overwhelmed, having that pause button. Don't send the email. Don't scream at your child at that moment. Like I see mothers in the market, you know, and they have 3 kids and they're screaming and climbing all over the place and they're just bereft. So at those times, I know I've treated mothers who say things that they regret at those times. But you need to have a plan in order to keep yourself calm during those times, and to have consequences for children, you know, in terms of behavior. If it's really horrid behavior, to have consequences. Well, I won't take you to the market the next time, or whatever it is. But you have to be able to take care of the situation without just acting out, because so many parents, they just reach their boiling point and they'll say things, they'll, you know, be angry, and then the child will think that they did something terrible and wrong, you know, much more than what it actually was. And so those are a few tips.
Yeah, it's that sort of escalation that can so easily occur, isn't it? Just, yeah, the shouting leads to more shouting, and everything, the calmness is out the window, and actually, yeah, finding how to add that pause, just taking that, okay, that breath, that, right, let's just stop for now, and I'm going to choose how I'm going to proceed from
Yes.
that, out of that moment.
Yes,
Yeah.
you have a choice. And one other thing I'd like to warn parents against is my parents did do this, and it really upset me, where I could hear them arguing from my room.
Right.
I was in my room as a little girl, and I hear them arguing fairly frequently, and it really upset me. So you don't want to be in a position where your children hear you two arguing, or whoever you're arguing with. Not a good thing. And just be aware that they're listening.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't want that. It's not a
and
good,
especially with highly sensitive children, you know, do a lot of work with people who kind of develop that. It's almost like an over empathy and the people pleasing sort of mechanism, or the over responsibility for the well-being of others. And when it's for people who really should be your caregivers, when you're a child, and you know, you're trying to keep the peace with, maybe whether it's your parents or the kind of relational dynamic in the house, and then you develop that, the safety that you experience comes through, yeah, just sort of like trying to keep the peace in these other relationships. And again, like I said earlier, that sort of losing yourself, you potentially lose yourself to this role that you then develop as the point of regulation for other people. And yeah, that's often not it's never a great thing. And yeah, sort of a lot of undoing that needs to happen kind of later on with that.
yes, and many children feel like they're to blame for the arguing.
Yeah.
So even though they're not, that they feel that way, they internalize that. So just be aware that your child, especially if it's a sensitive child, is listening and hearing and noticing things. Now, as opposed to maybe a child who isn't necessarily highly sensitive, they might have their earphones on, they might be on, you know, their games or whatever. So they're more in an isolated situation. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but it's just they're a little bit more guarded, whereas the sensitive children probably wouldn't be doing that. And so just to be aware of that. And also in the car is not a great place to argue. As I remember driving with my parents in the car, being in the back seats, and they would bicker. And I would feel terrible. And I'd have these fantasies of wanting to jump out at the light and just walk. So it's, you know, the reason I'm sharing is that I invite everybody to look back on their childhood and notice what things didn't work for them, so you don't repeat it as a parent of a highly sensitive child. It's a good journey backward to remember things that happened to you and be very, very forgiving, of yourself, and to say this was not anything you caused. This was your parents having difficulty getting along. No, it wasn't because of you. It was because of them. And so to be able to really liberate yourself from all those negative thoughts that you did something wrong, because you did.
Yeah, that's really great. Yeah, and I mean, just before we finish, I'd love to just hear when did you kind of realize that you were highly sensitive, and what did that realization look like for you? And is there a story around that?
Well, I realized I was highly sensitive at a very young age, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't
have words for it.
vocabulary for it. And it was, this was another part of my story, but in order to run from my sensitivities as a teenager, I got very heavily involved with drugs and alcohol. And so in order to shut them off, because I was getting no help. And so it was through my own psychotherapy, and with a very loving man, he was able to tell me, you have to embrace the sensitive part of yourself and your intuition and your dreams to be whole. And so I've got really good guidance along the way to help me integrate it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of the things that I was wondering, is there a plan for a sequel to The Highly Sensitive Rabbit?
A sequel? There could be many sequels to this story. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. We'll see what happens, what evolves this book. But there could be many things that could happen with this book that would be fun and helpful and good for our culture.
Yeah. When I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is a fantastic, the foundation, that moment of feeling judged or feeling like you don't quite fit in, and then coming to integrate that sensitivity within your experience and within your understanding of yourself. And then that enables that next step to, as we've talked about, like turn that back out to the world in a way that feels good and it is sustainable to you, and it allows you to be your sensitive self within the world, making a meaningful difference. And I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to see that, the sequel in that.
That's great. Yeah, the next episode of The Highly Sensitive Rabbit, once she learns some of this, then what happens?
Yeah.
What does she do? What happens in life? Who does she meet? What?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's
much
great.
to explore. Yeah.
Much to explore.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, Judith, this has been wonderful. Anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to maybe mention before we finish?
Well, I'd like to mention that if you'd like to reach me, my website is drjudithorloff.com, and I am having online events for the book, and the book's available on my website as well as online or any bookstore you can order it from. And you could always reach me or information about my private practice on drjudithorloff.com.
Excellent. And I will put links to all of that in the description and in the show notes and everything. So
thank you.
Yes, people can find you through that. Wonderful. Well, I wish you all the best with the release, and very exciting. I hope it all goes very well.
Thank you.
Yeah, hope to speak to you again soon.
Yes, it's lovely speaking with you.
So shines a good deed in a weary world.
Can all be angels in disguise. We can be